I don't know if you can hear me. I don't even know if there's anybody there. I'm having a snack. Yep. Let's see. So, this is one person watching. 2 people watching at 3:45 in the morning. Can you hear me? I don't know. I don't know if the mic's working. I'm still not very good with this stuff. You have to let me know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Late night snack. Cheese. Good. I'll plug this in. Turn on this. I don't know. Can you hear me? This is tomato juice. And boiled egg. Help me sleep. Well, I wasn't very prepared for this. So, let's see. DC emergency legislation. Let's see what comes up. There we go. All right. Hold on. How does this work? Now, I didn't prepare myself with this because I don't spend a lot of time on this. What happened? Is it still working? I completely exited out of the program. What would happen if I open this? What would happen if I open this? Does it loop? What would happen if I open this? Does it loop? What would happen if I open this? So, see, I don't do this enough. I don't do this enough. So we want share screen. Let's see. I forget. There you go. So, what you're looking at here, hold on, I don't hear shit. Okay. This is the Emergency Program Act for British Columbia, Canada. And what that did was open up a can of worms. And by that I mean, I have focus. Through the UN, right? The Canadian government and a whole lot of other governments, 184 of them or 187 or something like that. Oh, I'm not very prepared. I printed it out. I don't know where it is right now. Anyway, this is just a little snack. I'm just having a snack. I'm just testing this out. Right? But basically what happened was somewhere along the way, the UN, through its political agenda to I don't know, establish a one world government where I guess you could say socialism is supposed to be the norm for the betterment of humanity in terms of distributing wealth, right? Equally between the people. I think that's the premise, the basis that they're trying to sell us, right? But at the end of the day, it's the government that takes up more than 57% of public tax dollars just to sustain itself as a government in terms of government employees. This scheme that they brought in under the disguise of preparing for an emergency, as a government should, is to ensure, first of all, their employment. That's why they've been labeled essential workers that are guaranteed their wages and benefit packages and whatnot. That's the first thing. And you have to understand that years ago, back in 2000 and 2001, right, based on what the BC Liberal government was running on when it was like time for elections and that type of thing, politicians have known for a long time that the number of elderly coming into retirement surpasses the budgets, the provincial and state budgets, right, to pay for the pension plans that are attached to a lot of these elderly people as they're coming into retirement, which is kind of bankrupting states, provinces, and the federal government because not enough tax dollars are going into, old age pension and that type of stuff. So there's like been a crisis brewing for a very long time. So the reason I call what we're going through right now is like a scheme, because what it's done is it's rediverted tax dollars away from essential services like 30,000 elective surgeries over a period of 2 months under an assumed pandemic that's been overinflated, hyperventilated, and just over-exaggerated to justify the actions of a few for the benefit of the few. When you think of 400,000 government employees versus 5.2 million people in the province of British Columbia, Canada. So 400,000 government employees are considered an essential service, so their employment is insured. And because they're a government, the government is obligated through the unions to pay their wages and to continue to pay into these benefit packages wherever they may be, as well as continue to pay and find the money to pay for these pension plans that are, coming into fruition as the baby boomers are now coming into the system and are projected to be there within the system, drawing on all these tax dollars that technically aren't there, right? For the next 15 to 20 years. So we were already working in a deficit back in 2001. The beastly Liberal government came in, which is kind of like a Republican Party, right? If you wanted to apply it to that kind of agenda, right? In terms of smaller government, more private enterprise, more capitalism. But along with that came a lot of cutbacks because they wanted to budget the ballot. They wanted to balance the budget, and through balancing the budget, they clawed back in a lot of areas. But at the end of the day, it was to ensure that their responsibilities to the union was basically met. Well, that didn't really work. All it did was create a lot of poverty and a lot of hardship. But now we're finding ourselves kind of back in the same situation where government is scrambling for money to ensure that it meets the union's expectations before the public. And I can say this with confidence because I listen to these people in my province yakety-yak every day, even though I tell myself, no, you don't need to listen to it. It just gets you mad, right? And the first thing that I can tell you is the majority, 99.9%, okay, 99.01% are white. White senior upper union, government union employees who are trying to secure their future portfolios to make sure that they will always remain as an essential service, because the Legislative House of Assembly, which is about 89 MLAs, say so. Right? So, of course, they're going to go with the government because they want their paychecks. It's, getting a government job has always been the big ticket, right? So that this program that they're bringing in with a health crisis is being done through the UN in unison with 100 and we'll just say 87 countries who all signed on onto this accord. I'm not going to pull it up right now because first of all, it's too late and I'm tired. I have it printed out here somewhere. And basically it was written up in 2015, probably sooner than that. It has some odd name. It's like a foreign name of some kind because this is coming in from foreigners. It's like being invaded. Canada is being invaded by foreigners. Canada is no longer a sovereign country. We don't have sovereignty in Canada. We don't even have nationalism. What we have is a tentacle that's just attached itself somehow to the UN, where they wrote up a bunch of words under this program that in the event of a disaster, they want to mitigate the disaster itself to the point where it becomes less of a disaster, right? They want to try and prevent the disaster before the disaster actually happens. Where in the old days, legislation that I got here was written up to deal with disasters when they happened, right? So, like a forest fire, right? They don't act on the disaster until the forest is actually on fire. Then they come in with their, water bombing planes and the firefighters and, they fight the fire. Through this accord that came in with the UN that was written basically in 2015, and then the province of British Columbia, Canada, adopted it in 2018, which would have been the New Democratic Party. But I don't think this is coming from the so-called New Democratic Party, as it is coming through the Trudeau government in regards to the federal government. And then it's the federal government that tells all the provinces to jump on board, because the federal government is the representative when it sits at the round table at the UN. But our politicians out here are really enjoying and gloating over the power that they have through this accord that was written up to micromanage a disaster, supposedly to prevent it from getting worse. When you read it, that's what it says, right? It's more of a preventative than it is to deal with it. This is why, if you listen to these politicians, they talk about how they've mitigated, like they slow down the numbers of people going into the hospitals so that in the event that we really had a big outbreak, there's room in the hospitals to accommodate those people. And then, of course, they needed more protective gear, all this stuff, because they overinflated, over-exaggerated, hyperinflated the reality of what they're acting on under the disguise of a pandemic that was created before this even began. Because when they came out, they all came out with the same playbook. which was written basically in 2015, and then the different states and provinces over the last couple, 2-3 years have adopted it. And it was revised in 2018. This is my understanding of the political. I don't even know if anybody's watching. Oh, 4 people. Okay. So anyway, this is my understanding of why we're kind of finding ourselves in this situation. But it's a very bad situation, because as I listen to this, I'll give you just a couple of examples. I'm just having a snack, trying to fall asleep here, people. If I eat, I get tired. I'll fall asleep, right? But, I listen to this Bonnie Henry. I'm not even going to give her the title of a doctor, because I don't consider her to be a doctor. She's destroying hundreds of thousands, millions of lives in this province. And she's completely ignorant, as in like rude, not as in naive, but as in rude to her actions, because she's promoting this agenda that was formed at the UN table to remove countries from having their own sovereignty, to be able to have right to your own bodies. There's another name for it. Okay, I'm off track here. So, to give you an example of how dangerous this is in terms of where we're heading with this, as of yesterday, I guess it was, they allowed kids to go back into school. However, now I've talked to somebody that has a child in school, and they've been communicating with this parent through email, telling them what this child is going to be up against if the child goes back to school. Because right now, at this point, because really the government really doesn't know what they're doing, right? They're kind of doing like what the BC Liberal government did, but only the NDP is being much more brazen about it, in terms of, well, we know what we're doing. You can send them to school. They're testing their temperatures every day. They're having half class size, or 8 kids per room, or something like that. 6 feet apart. They're not allowed to congregate or socialize. So you're going to have a kid over there, a kid over there, a kid over there, a kid over there, right? With a teacher running around with or without a mask. Who fucking knows? If a kid comes down with a sniffle, they're immediately targeted, people, taken out of class, tested, and then have contact tracing, follow them home, and then after that, go into other people's houses to follow up on where this child apparently picked up COVID and brought it to school. Because the teachers don't have it. The staff, none of them, because they are sanitizing their hands before they go into school. They're sanitizing their hands all day long. You see, it's the teachers who are afraid of the children, because this Bonnie Henry gets up on the mic and says, oh no, the children don't get COVID from daycares. They don't get COVID. I heard this today, people. They don't get COVID playing in the playground. They don't get COVID in school. Children get COVID at home from their parents. This is what the studies tell us. This is what she's saying on the podium, to convince parents to send the kids back to school with all these restrictions, right? And if the parents say, no, I don't want that to happen, I want my kid to go to school and be free, right? Not some game board, like on a game board, you pick up the game piece and you move it over here and you move it over here, and like there's some really weird shit going on, right? Because the teachers are afraid that the children are coming to school infected with COVID from their parents, not the other way around. Well, let me tell you something. Anytime my kids ever went to school, it was always the kids coming home with the colds from school or the puking flu. Everybody knows kids get puking flus at fucking school, right? So how is COVID going to be any more different? The kids are more at risk going to school, getting it from school, than being at home and going to school and giving it to the teachers. But you see, it's all about the union, people, right? The union comes first. And British Columbia, Canada, is a union province. The BC Liberal government tried to bust them up. They did union busting in 2001, 2002, 2003. That's why after all that union busting happened, all these immigrants started to flood BC to take up the jobs that were basically removed by the BC Liberal government in terms of like the lower bottom rung of the union, in terms of the kitchen staff, the cleaning staff, those kind of people, right? They're the ones that got busted with their unions. And to fill that gap, the government just came in with their surplus of immigrants so that they wouldn't squawk and they could boss them around, right? So that's why I say, you look at these people and they're all middle class, upper middle class white people sitting on good pension plans, sitting on good superannuation life insurance policies. They have their dental plans. They have their health care plans. They have their partners in crime in their back fucking pockets, so they know that if they commit a crime, they'll never be held to account. So they accumulate wealth there, right? Because it's like a cartel. And the union, in terms of the union, I mean, obviously, they've been around forever, long before the immigrants really ever showed up, in terms of, we've always had immigrants, right? But we don't treat them as well as we used to in terms of a government union paid job. In the old days, when Uncle John was working as a janitor, after 25 years of cleaning the Parliament building, where these people go every day, right? He got his pension plans, but look what it got him. It got him fucking robbed, and it destroyed his life. Whereas today, someone like Uncle John doing that job today isn't going to get the same benefits, because the BC Liberal government, they got rid of it because of this baby boom coming in, taking up all the tax resources just to pay for their pension plans, never mind all these healthcare extra costs that have accumulated because of them. And the government, they have to find ways to save money to pay for that. And union busting was one of them. Well, Now that that's been done, we're going into a new phase where they're trying to bring in socialism to the point where, this is just my opinion, well, obviously you're going to have your upper class, which is going to be the government employees that are cat in the bag, right? Because they're dubbed as essential service, right? And they live in a bubble, right? And if you want to be a part of that bubble, well, then you might as well be ready to sacrifice your freedom and your liberty and your peace and everything else that you might have, because they're going to make it where, being that they've bankrupted 1 million people in this province, and I'll give you another example. Okay, let me finish with the school first. This Bonnie Henry, one of these news reporters, said that some school on the island, up in the Nanaimo or Duncan or someplace like that in Victoria Island, they brought in heat sensors, people. They brought heat sensors into an elementary school so that when kids walk through the door, they're being scanned for a fever to prevent COVID from coming into school. If that is not an invasion of privacy, it's not even privacy. It's just fucking common sense. I don't know what is. And you know what this woman had to say about that? Because this reporter asked her if she was okay with that or if she would recommend that. Good morning. I'm having a snack. Sometimes I work so hard, I get overworked and I can't fall asleep. So if I eat a little bit, but I've been wanting to try and get back up on these lives so I can talk about this stuff, because this is a very bad situation here, because that woman basically said, oh yeah, it's not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. No, they can scan the kids, if it works for them, I'm fine. So basically what she's done is she's opened up the doorway for other schools to do the same thing. And once they bring in the heat sensors, what else are they going to bring in? They're already testing them with thermometers as soon as they come in through the fucking door. Like, these are children. I don't know why they want to stress out kids, right? This is like some weird social science experiment that's completely making them in parts of their brain where they're going to be completely void of common sense or personality, right? We've been watching you work like a teenager. No, I'm not no teenager. I just want to get this shit done with so I can get on with other things in my life before I get too old. All right. Got to take the good with the bad. I'm happy with my raspberries, but these weeds, I don't know. When they start growing, they're all over the place. That's why I built everything that I built, was to cover up weeds. Right? So I'm halfway there. Okay, let me finish what I was saying, because this is so important, and I got to talk more about this, and because okay, so now we've got the union targeting children, criminalizing them if they should have a fever. Because if they show any signs of fever, because now you have to remember they're bringing in heat sensors into schools to check kids right before they walk in. And they've got cameras watching them to make sure that they don't interact. Right? Children are going to want to naturally migrate to each other, and you're going to have teachers standing there scolding those children, saying, no, 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 you're not allowed to stand that close to each other. Ralph, you know the rules. You need to go to the principal's office because you didn't follow the rules. You weren't 6 feet over there on your X. What kind of education is this, people? Right? And all in the name of protecting the union worker, because they're the ones who are the essential workers who don't want to get sick. They're not worried about the kids. They're worried about themselves. I listen to these people every day, and it makes me very angry. And this is what I'm hearing. And trust me, people, I have been listening to the BC legislative assemblies for a very, very, very long time, with many of their debates over the years, because that's one thing Uncle John did, is he got me into politics, and he educated me on what type of people that we're dealing with. And you know what? He was spot on. It is nothing about their portfolios and ensuring that their pension plans are paid for and all these other little perks that are in these portfolios. And it's coming down to that because these governments have been working for so long in a fucking deficit, even though we had the beastly Liberal government coming in saying, oh, balance the budget, working on a balanced budget or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, they're so far fucking gone with their overspending on themselves, with their pension plans and all this other shit that they fucking spend out billions of dollars on, right? Now they're making it where eventually they're going to bring in a fixed wage for the majority of the people, okay? And the reason I say this is because I listened to Carol James today. Carol James, who back in 2002 and 2001, and there was 2 NDP in the House of Legislative Assemblies with another 85 more freaking BC Liberal government. And Uncle John and I, we used to sit there and listen to Carol James and I can't remember her name right now, be in the Legislative House of Assemblies debating until 6 o'clock in the fucking morning. Okay, Uncle John and I would be sitting there listening to them right up until 6 o'clock in the morning as these 2 women took on the BC Liberal Party to hold them to account to the destruction that they brought to this people in this province by bringing in draconian freaking legislation that pushed thousands, tens of thousands more people into poverty. And now we've got these same very fucking people pushing millions into poverty because they are somehow bound to a federal government that has sold off freaking Canada to the fucking UN. It's one thing being sold off to China, but now we've been sold off to the UN to the point where, out of those 2 million people that they've brought down to poverty, eventually they're going to have to give them a fixed wage. And this is why when this stuff came in, they started giving out all these little $2,000 here, $500 there. You got money from the federal government. They got this, got that, right? The reason that happened is because in that little portfolio or that little that thing that was written in 2015, then it was altered in 2018. BC Liberal government adopted it in 2018, and then they decided to roll it out. It's written where in a presumed disaster, The government is responsible to mitigate the hardships around that. So that's why everybody started getting this financial relief, right? Because they knew in advance that what they were going to do was going to bankrupt millions of people. So in order to save face, they had to be prepared, right? This is why this is up. This is a preparedness plan. They had to be prepared. And the only way that they could be prepared for such a situation as the one that we are in right now was to give out financial compensation for the destruction that they have created based on a presumption that we're in a pandemic, because they're exaggerating the numbers. And there are no real fact checks because the legislation, at least in the province of British Columbia, Canada, has been written to prevent us to follow up on how our loved ones really died, because we can't get independent autopsies out here. And they've also ensured that people can't witness how their loved ones are being treated or how they're dying. So in essence, they have allowed criminal activity to flourish unchecked because there's nobody there to witness what's being done to tens of thousands of lives across this province. Well, country, I should say. Right? So this Carol James, I'm going to end this soon because I'm getting tired now. She got up on YouTube today, well, yesterday, and because businesses are flopping, there are business owners that lease property but can't pay their rent for their property that they're leasing to run their business in, while the property owner doesn't want to fill out the paperwork in order to get a 70%, cash from the federal government or whatever government that's allotting out this money to hold them over until the business can reopen and get back to semi-normal after it's been expected to invest thousands of dollars into plexiglass and also be prepared to lose half of its income because they have to have everybody 6 feet apart in order to be able to run their business effectively, unless, of course, they want to be shut down after the cops raided them for not following the rules, even though there is no real legislation as of yet. Not that legislation means anything, because you can file a lawsuit with all kinds of legislation right down to the T, and they will completely ignore it because it doesn't benefit the union. But if that legislation benefits the union, then it becomes like a Bible. So anyway, she's saying, oh, well, don't worry. We're going to help you out for the month of June. We're not too sure about July. We have to wait and see what the federal government says. We're going to make it so that landlords can't kick you out, even though your business is closed. And it's been closed for the last 2-3 months, and you haven't made no money, right? But we're just going to make sure that the landlord doesn't kick you out because they're too lazy to fill out the forms. Don't worry, you got 1 month to figure it out. And maybe we'll figure out something. I'm telling you what she said in a nutshell, right? Maybe we'll figure out something, and, we'll build in a payment plan so that, if we give you some money, you can pay us back where it's convenient. Or If you can't, or you can pay back the landlord. If you owe the landlord money for rent, even though you haven't made no money for 3 months because of us, that's not important. What's important is that if you talk to your landlord and be kind and nice to him, and he be kind and nice back to you as you're 6 feet apart, maybe he'll agree to let you stay if you make a payment plan to pay him back what you fucking owe him. Like, this is like child play, people. But it's not, though. This is real lives being destroyed. Right? As the government gives pittance, it's called pittance. 500 here, 300 there, another 200 there, to keep you quiet for now. But, don't do this, don't do that, don't. And then, so anyway, it all stems from this, people. Every state, every province, if you're interested in knowing how this happened, look up your emergency preparedness legislation, and then you'll see it root out from there into something that was written up in 2015. It has some foreign name to it. I'll pull it up the next time I come and do this. I'll show you if you haven't found it by then. And then they tweaked it in 2018. And then they brought it out in 2020. And it's to ensure that there will always be money for upper senior union staff that's directly connected to governments. I would assume that's federal, provincial, states, counties, and municipalities. Government is government. I mean, that's the number one most important entity on this planet, right? God forbid, the world wouldn't work without them. And everybody else is secondary to that agenda. And that's why a whole bunch of people got knocked off the fucking grid, right? I don't know. We have to figure this out a little more in terms of how to fight back, right? There are people that are fighting back already, and this is good. Some are fighting back in the wrong kind of way in terms of a lot of this pent-up anger that's going on with this George Floyd is because of the coronavirus, and people don't have a future anymore, right? And they're already facing hurdles with racism and bigotries and discrimination and prejudices, and our governments have just made it that much harder for us and have added the numbers to that gene pool where it puts more of us at risk to being targeted without the government taking any responsibility for that. And they're proving it, people, because they're targeting the kids as soon as they walk in the door. If anything, from this live, you walk away with that. Okay? The government is now effectively put itself in a position where it can so-called legally target children the minute they walk into a public institution called a school. We already know that in the United States of America, it's been dubbed the prison pipeline. The public school education in the United States of America for millions and millions and millions of kids is nothing but a pipeline for prison. Now they're bringing in heat sensors with thermometers and straitjackets and vehicles to whisk children off into isolation where nobody can witness how they're being treated. It may come to that. It hasn't come to that yet. But we know that it's the children that are the problem because they don't get it from school, people. They don't get COVID from school. The minister said that today, as proud as she could be. Children don't get COVID from daycares. Send them to daycare. Oh, children don't get COVID from playgrounds, but yet they haven't been able to play out in the fucking playground. So how the hell can she say that? Oh, children don't get COVID from school. No. It's safe to send the kids to school. They're going to wash their hands all day long with disinfectant. Don't you worry. They're not going to be allowed to sit beside nobody. Don't you worry. If they don't listen, we're going to send them to the principal's office. Don't you worry. And if they come to school 6, don't worry. We're going to find it and we're going to let you know because they got it from home. That's basically what she's saying, people. Children get COVID from home. That's what her statistics say. They don't get it from school. How the fuck would she know? The kids have been out of school for 2 months. Right? But you see, the union isn't concerned about the kids. The union is concerned about themselves. But yet they want to dub themselves an essential service. And they're doing it in a warped way through disaster preparedness. That's why they become essential, because we're in a disaster. But this is a disaster that was manufactured by the very politicians that represent this disaster. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to explain myself better on this. Okay? I know I didn't do a very good job. It's like my son said, where's the proof? So I have to pull up those things I'm talking about. But you can start looking in your own disaster preparedness legislation where you will locate what I'm talking about. Because as soon as you come into contact with it and you read it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. And then you'll understand why we're going through this. And unfortunately, all this pent-up frustration that's resulted from this is, being redirected into an area that's distracting people away from the scheme that they're under right now in terms of being hoodwinked by our politicians. Just because the cops are kneeling down in front of the people right now to appease the people so that they don't riot doesn't mean that they're not fucking two-faced or speaking with forked tongue, okay? Anybody can say anything and then completely do the opposite. What these young people need to be doing is figuring out where their futures are going in the real sense of politics, right? And challenge that. And seriously, some of these politicians need to be fired, right? Or be taken to court in terms of lawsuits, because to try and get them like revoked or repealed or whatever that's called, impeached, or, to get them to step down, it's too long of a process. It's funny, and I'm going to leave it on this note. These politicians in my area, oh, well, it's a democracy. Really, it is, but you're not allowed to protest. We gave the order that you're only allowed 50 people. And you're beyond 52,000 people is not 50 people. No. It says we gave the order. No, protest is, you can't protest. But then 2 sentences later, oh, but we're in a democracy. Yep. We're going to bring in legislation to prove that, because we're in a democracy. Well, we're either in a democracy or we're in a dictatorship. We're not in a democracy anymore, people. Because now if COVID spreads, it's those people that were rallying up in Vancouver a day ago, right, that made it spread. Although none of those people that were rallying outside of the Vancouver Arts Building are going into these old folks' homes. Okay? So, you're being lied to. I mean, I have to play little clips of these people talking. It takes time though, right? And you see me, I'm busy right now. So that you can hear the forked tongue that they speak with in regards to, in one breath, it's a democracy, but in another breath, they're getting curt with you, saying you're not allowed to gather no more than 50. Because one of the reporters said, well, now that people know that they can come together in large numbers, if you just attach the word protest to it, what you gonna do, Bonnie Henry? I gave the order. I ordered. It's only because I care about the people. I did it for the people. You're only allowed 50, right? So, you know, they need to follow the rules. They really, really do. Oh, we're not under martial law. No. BC is a free country. It's a free province. Although we're not letting people come into our province. We already have martial law here, people. They don't allow people to come into the province unless you got a fucking thermometer up your ass. Right? If you're not willing to have a thermometer up your fucking ass testing your fucking temperature, don't come to fucking Canada or British Columbia, Canada, because they got the fucking everywhere on lockdown. How is that a democracy? That is not a fucking democracy. They tell you, well, don't go to a different province. Go just shop around town. You know, you can go camping in BC. You don't need to go to Alberta. Like, it's so much nonsense. It's so much nonsense. This is worse than a storybook. And these people really need to be held to account. But we don't know how to hold them to account until we understand what they're doing to us and how they're doing it. And I'm telling you, they're doing it through this. And they picked the easiest route. You look into this legislation, I'm pretty sure it's here. There's a list of things that they could have chosen from in order to do what they did, and they chose health because it's and a virus to boot, the invisible enemy, because it's ambiguous. With ambiguity and being ambiguous comes unaccountability, and they know it, and that's why they do it. They did the same shit with John. They did the same shit with ShaMay. They did the same shit when they took Andre and what they did with Ciera. Okay? They even did the same shit with Amari. They're being ambiguous with it as they harm and injure you. Okay? That's why nothing really aligns up. That's why everybody's on a different fucking page, but yet they're all under one playbook. But at the end of the day, who comes out ahead? It is the essential workers, which is the public union sector. Because public tax dollars need to be redirected. Into their portfolios. They're ensuring that their pension plans will be paid out as they keep up with the baby boomers. And look, Uncle John worked hard his whole life. people. I have nothing against people having pension plans and all those things. Uncle John had that. Why would I want other people not have what Uncle John had in terms of living in Canada or the United States and having that safety net, but it's beyond that now, because even if you have it, they're robbing it from you. That's what happened with Uncle John. Okay. And the only people that I see benefiting from all this nonsense, that us regular common folk, the real, like the peasants and the common folk, the down to earthers, right? The sincere people, like the ones that actually bleed red blood, is anyway, let's see. I'm gonna read this. I'm tired. Okay, still 4 people watching. Sorry, I can't. I can't read unless I have this. I just wanted to try and say what I had to say. I know I said that before. I know I need to come out with more evidence. I wanted to try this again in terms of StreamYard. I actually paid for StreamYard. It cost me over $300. I thought it was Canadian money, but it ended up having to pay American money. And I bought it in January and I never use it. So I'm like, come on, Judy, you need to get your monies out of this, right? You got to give it a shot. I really want to change the page, but I'm not going to Google anything right now. So that's your homework here. Okay. If you're trying to understand what the fuck is going on and how they're getting away with this, people, you got to ask yourself, how are they getting away with this? Because a lot of what they're doing isn't even legal. Because if you listen again to what they say, it's not like they're coming out with the evidence. They're not saying, well, right here it's written where it says that I can do this. They're just saying, oh, well, it's been ordered. And then when you challenge, oh, well, this is what I think. I can only give you the advice not to gather for the protest because you're going to take home the coronavirus to somebody in your household and, you might kill your granny. You got a 22-year-old running around at the Vancouver Arts Building protesting for George, Floyd and for that other woman up in Ontario area where, she fell off the balcony with the police down there watching her, with their cell phones fucking taking pictures, I'm sure. Right? We know how I feel about that one, people. They were the only ones in the room, just like with Ciera. Snuff movies are a big business. It goes under the black web. It's hard to track, especially if nobody's fucking doing anything about it. And if you can't trust the cops to do anything about it, then, don't be surprised if it's not them doing it. That's just the way it is. That's the reality of it, because they're the ones with all the fucking resources. They're the ones who actually protect the crooks. It's not like they send the real crooks to jail. They settle always for the little petty crooks, so nobody can be surprised. Okay, so now I'm just going around in circles. I don't want to get depressed. I won't think about that shit. So anyway, just look up your preparedness legislation for your province and your state and see where it takes you. Okay, and you're going to find that it's going to root to the UN under this little agenda that they started bringing in 2015. Then they tweaked it in 2018. And then they rolled it out as one big fucking team. And at the end of the day, the only people that are really benefiting from it are the union workers. Because they had to find a way to ensure that they remained an essential service, that as the economy was crashing, their paychecks would always be paid with their pension plans, benefit packages, and all this other shit. So don't be surprised if you don't find that 57% of taxpayers' dollars that is already going in to those things within the public union sector doesn't increase to 65% to 70%, as they'll try and convince you that, they're spending money to help people, even though the help that they give them has pushed them down deep into that manufactured poverty that I talk about, people. Because I talk about it from experience. So when you got Carol James getting up there and telling business owners that have been in business for years, oh, don't worry, your landlord can't kick you out for the month of June because we say so. All you have to do is talk nice, and hopefully they'll make a plan so that you can pay them a little extra every month after the fact for what you owe them, even though we're the ones who are responsible for bankrupting you and pushing you into poverty and also keeping you there. And then psychological fucking assault, warfare, abuse on young, impressionable minds for some social experiment to protect teachers so that they can grow old and enjoy spending their money. I gotta get some sleep. Good night.